Hi, everyone, and welcome to the London Community Week podcast, the show where we spotlight the brilliant minds shaping the future of community building across the UK and beyond. I'm your host, Kateryna Bova. If you're part of a startup, a nonprofit, or a global SaaS company, and you care about connection, meaningful impact, and community-led growth, this space is for you. This episode actually is brought to you with the support of our incredible partners led by Community, Gainsight, Circle, Hey Orca, Canva, Bevy, Discourse, and Mention. Together, they are helping the community industry thrive by providing the tools to grow, engage, and make a real difference and scale. It's a big pleasure to welcome a longtime leader here, mentor, and strategist in the community space, Brian Oblinger. Brian is a community consultant with over 25 years of experience helping brands like eBay, HP, PlayStation, Acer, Autodesk, and the Home Depot build stronger, more impactful communities. Through his work, he has helped companies increase satisfaction, lower support costs, and generate real business value through strategic customer engagement. He's also the founder and lead instructor at the Community Strategy Academy, where he trains the next generation of community professionals and the co-host of the In Before the Luck podcast, a staple in the community world. Brian, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So let's start with you, with your current focus. What kind of companies or community challenges are you helping now? And tell us more about that.
Yeah, many different challenges. That's actually what I enjoy about the work still. I think that's a question for later too. But, I kind of come to my desk here every day and dial into a bunch of different Zooms and sit in a bunch of people's Slack channels and help them think about what is a community, why does it matter, how do we build strategy, how do we measure it, how do we solve this problem or that problem, how do we engage our members, all of those things.
Yeah.
And some of that is best practice things that we've learned over the years, but a lot of it is also really understanding what's interesting and unique about the organization, their customers, the people that they'll have in the community, whatever it is. So that's me and kind of what I do all day long.
Can you share maybe also with us some kinds of companies or communities from which field these communities now that you are working with?
Yeah, I mostly tend to work with like B2B SaaS tech companies. I've worked with every type of community across every possible, incarnation of companies and communities. But generally where I sit is kind of like that tech SaaS, B2B. And I think that's because that's sort of like where the money is too, like those are the companies that actually they have the budget, they want to invest, they would go out and find a consultant like me, kind of thing. So some of it is that's what I'm good at. And I think but part of it is just that's kind of the market, for services like mine. And so that's who I tend to work with.
Yeah, great. You've been in this industry for over 25 years. And how did your journey into a community begin? And what kept you it for so long time?
Yeah, I always describe it as dumb luck is the answer to your question. I was just a kid who liked video games, and
Yeah.
my dad got a computer and hooked it up to the internet way back in the day, I guess. And I got on there, and the first thing I typed into, I don't even think like Google and that sort of like didn't exist, back then. And so somehow I figured out how to search the internet at that time and found gaming communities. And that was really the first kind of exposure I had, to like what's an online community. Oh, there's all these people from all over the world. And I always say this, and I think maybe it sounds trite nowadays, but my mind was blown then, and it continues to be blown, that like, look at us right now. We are talking to each other across the world over like
Yeah.
waves in the air, and like we just take that so for granted. And like, what an incredible, opportunity and technology. And so that's, that was sort of my initial exposure to communities, and that thought of like, wow, I'm talking to someone from Japan, about a video game that we both play. Like, it was just a kind of crazy thing. So that's how I got into it. And it just turned out that at that time, a good number of those communities happened to be hosted on what was then Lithium. And they were like, hey, you're here all the time. You should help us, like, volunteer, be a volunteer moderator,
Yeah.
And so I just started like that. I was a member, a super user, a moderator, a community manager. And then at some point they were like, all right, just come work for us, like actually as an employee, sort of a thing. And I was just teaching people, like today, I was teaching people how to build these things and what to do. And so it was a very organic, I didn't like set out to do it. I didn't go to school for it. It just kind of happened to me. And I am, forever grateful.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's really big journey, and I appreciate all of your thoughts because I saw your background, and now I'm just developing also in community journey in this sphere, and see you for me as a big leader actually, and it's so interesting to understand your way, your thoughts, and actually now you have a lot of different clients, you're working a lot with different brands, you have your own academy, and what motivates you? What inspires you, Brian?
I think that experience I just described, I want other people to have that experience. I've seen the power of what a community can be, and the value that it can have in people's lives, and the value that then a company can derive from the value that it is in people's lives. And I just want to bring that to as many people as I possibly can, and so ultimately that's why I continue doing this work and what interests me about it. And just there's so much value there to be had. And it's interesting because as long as I've been doing this, you would think, oh, like every company in the world, must be doing this already, right? And the answer is no. I run into people all day, every day who tell me, we've never done this before, we've heard about it, or my last company did it, but we don't know how to do it. And so there's still, even though we've been doing it for 25, 30 years, whatever it's been, there's still such a big opportunity to help, companies and people build community. So we're just scratching the surface. And I think that's another thing that, with AI and everything, it's like, oh, communities are done. And I actually think we're just getting started.
Do you have a rest actually? Because you have a lot of things and you have a lot of working things. Just small question. Do you have some small pauses or something just to relax or just to stop something?
Oh yeah, I have plenty of hobbies,
Okay.
It's kind of interesting because it's a passion, but it's also a job. And I recognize that,
It's because I'm asking, yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's a job, it's a career. And so at the end of the day, I watch a lot of sports. I like to be outside. I'm a very outdoorsy. I'm going camping this weekend. All kinds of things, just like anybody else. I think some people might assume that I spend all of my free time on communities when I'm not working. And I have to say that is not the case. And that, the last thing that I want to do at the end of the workday is like go be a member in a community. And that's no slight on members of community. It's just, I can only give so much, to that, and got to have a life outside of work. Right.
Yeah, Brian, thank you for sharing that, because it's a big, I think, illusion that we are guys from a community world. We are always talking, we are always with people, we are always with some groups, but sometimes we just need a rest. And yeah, it's okay for us to do something not about community. So, and it's okay. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And actually I wanted to ask you about the conference, about London Community Week, because it's coming up soon. Can you share with us about your topic, about your speech, and what do you want to talk to the audience?
Yeah. Well, I'm super excited about it. I came last year. I love the UK. I love London. So very excited to come again and see your
Super.
beautiful city there. This year it always occurs to me with these conference talks that a lot of what we hear, and this is no slight on anybody, but I think there's a tendency for them to be very high level, very I guess like thought leadership, whatever. And so what I try to do is be extremely kind of tactical and like, here's something that I can hopefully teach in a short period of time, whatever the slot is, and something people can take back to their desk and start working on. So this year, I did content programs last year, and this year I'm going to do how to build an effective report. So how do you take all of the analytics, the insights,
Wow.
the analysis, and put it into a one-page, report that maybe you send inside your organization every month, or, whatever the cadence is. And so we'll show real examples of this. We'll kind of talk about what the construction of that is and what are the different pieces and
Yeah.
parts, and how to evolve it over time to make sure that you're communicating the value of what you do inside the company, but also what impact the community's having as well. Because I think this is a big like missed opportunity in my travels, talking to companies. Communities are having great impact, and people are doing great work, but they don't tell anybody about it, or they don't know how to tell people about it. And then it's like, oh, I couldn't get that investment that I needed. And it's like, okay, well, have you been telling people about all the great work you're doing? And they're like, no, I don't know how to do that. So, the goal is to kind of, as much as I can, help
Wow.
people build those reports.
Wow, I think that's going to resonate with a lot of community managers, especially when you're working with big brands, big companies. A lot of departments like marketing, sales, product, and so on, they have a lot of stuff to do. And what I see, and I agree with this topic, sometimes community managers just, it's not about afraid to do something, it's more about doing a lot of job and maybe have a fear or something to show the big value of their doing, because we are always working with people, and reporting, it's so valuable topic. So yeah, thank you. I am looking forward for it, and just wanted to here in London, and here in our podcast, maybe you can share some key takeaways of this topic to our guys who are just watching this video.
Sure. Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and what you're going to hear at the talk as well, is if you think about, if I said to you, your report can only be one single page of like a PDF, right? Or one
Yeah.
page of a Google Doc. If you think of like constraining yourself on purpose and saying, what's the message I want to get through in this one single page? Which is a great forcing function for you to have to decide what's important versus what not. Because if you said, hey, I have this endless scrolling, Google sheet or whatever, it could be anything and it could be everything, and we're just going to send this every month. So that's a key takeaway, is like constrain yourself on purpose to force you to prioritize what's important. And then, what I sort of teach people, and we'll talk about on stage, is having kind of three distinct sections to your report. Quantitative, which is the numbers. Qualitative,
Yes.
what does it mean? What are the stories? What are we learning? And then what's next, which is usually some sort of roadmap, or here's what's coming, or here's how you can get involved, maybe a call to action, for people reading the report. And then we'll talk about like what you put in each of those sections. But if you kind of think about that structure, that will help you start to build an effective report.
Yeah. Wow. If to continue a bit this topic about reporting and about success of community, because you mentioned about numbers, and it's so important to use different numbers and to measure communities through different numbers and different KPIs. But here also, maybe you can share with us how it's better for you to measure success of community for businesses when, for example, you're working with brands, with your clients, and what you recommend to measure for them. How do you measure the success, the community impact for businesses?
Yeah. We're going to talk about this a little bit too on stage, which is that in the beginning, you're not going to have ROI, calculations and because your community is just not old enough to do that. And so in the beginning, we'll show kind of maybe a couple different phases of like how your report might evolve. In the beginning, it's going to be very much community, like operational metrics that you're getting from your community platform, right? So you might show, unique visitors, how many new members, and then engagement metrics, and just show, hey, like, here's what people are doing, they're coming, and that's it. That might be all that you have in the quantitative, the numbers part of it, and then you're relying a little bit more on the qualitative stories to tell the story of like, why does it matter? What does that mean? And then over time, you might say, okay, now we have a little bit more data. Maybe we have a little bit more ability to understand this, or run some numbers. And so then you might show a little bit of both. You might show a little bit of operational metrics, and you might say, hey, we think that directionally we're impacting some customer success metric, for example, or support deflection, or whatever it is. And then over time, you might actually slowly get rid of the operational metrics and have it be just the value ROI stuff, right? It really depends on where you're at in the maturity curve and your capabilities to measure, the access to data, right? Like, we're going to be honest about those things that I think sometimes when people talk about reporting, it's like, oh, just go do this like dashboard with all this ROI stuff and whatever. And it's, most community professionals are going to say, I don't have access to that data. Even if I did, I'm not a data scientist. So what I want to do is really ground it for people in, depending on what phase you're at in your capability and type of company, you might have a very different report with very different numbers. And that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, thank you. It's super clear and actionable. Just can't wait to hear more in person. And especially I agree with this point that sometimes when you are just launching community, you think that you need to measure so different metrics, but you don't have anything and you are just starting. And very often we forget about that as community managers. So thank you for your advices and your thoughts. So let's talk also a bit about some failures moment. I don't know if you like to talk about failures, but we all have like them. And maybe is there a hard lesson or mistake that you learned that helped shaping your approach to strategy or taught you something valuable?
Yeah. Well, I as I always say, I've probably failed enough for everybody, and that's a good thing, because that's how you learn. I think if everything's going great all the time, you don't actually, learn that much. So, one story I'll tell, and this is actually the genesis for why I talk about measurement so much, is that I had a traumatic event, So like it was like a long time ago. It was probably 20 years ago or something. I was still relatively young in my career. I was young age-wise, experience, all, in any every way that you could be young, I was young. And I showed up to this meeting with one of the biggest companies in the world. And it was my job to present to them some metrics that we were tracking, and I was like presenting in the meeting, sharing my screen, looking at a gigantic Excel spreadsheet that I had created, and some of the folks from the company kind of stopped me in the middle of the meeting and said, hey, I don't think these are the right metrics. And I don't think you're really like understanding what we care about here. And you know what? They were right. They're 100% right. And that day, I sort of vowed to myself and to my boss of like, that's never going to happen again. That was a very valuable
Mm-hmm.
lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to myself, okay, I need to invest now in understanding how companies work, like what kind of data they, look at and care about. How do they measure it? And then how do I take what we do from a community perspective and try to match that up? So that was a very formative, sometimes getting embarrassed is a good motivator. And so that's, led me to here today, where I've tried my best to learn how to do all of that and make it real. And I was fortunate to work at a couple of data science companies where I, had access to people who knew how to do that. And they taught me a bunch of things. And so now I'm trying to give back, right? And sort of bring it back around and say, hey, everybody, here's how to not be Brian 20 years ago. And, how to measure it.
Wow. Yeah. How did you feel after this meeting?
Horrible, terrible. I felt like I was going to get fired. I felt like I was like, I didn't know what I was doing, which, spoiler alert, I didn't know what I was doing. I was probably put in a bit of a tough situation as well, but that's life. And, I think all good lessons, not fun in the moment, but probably led me here. So maybe good in the end, right?
Yeah, 100%. Sometimes when we have like a cold shower and we understand that something bad happens, but later it's a big lesson for us. And why I'm asking, because all of us have a lot of different moments, a lot of different failures, but then I really believe, and what I see, really becoming more stronger, and we understand how it's better to do some things, and we teach something for us and for our career. So it's great. What about some proudest moment? Maybe you remember some latest case or some community that you helped to build, or something that was so bright for you, and you are still smile when you're thinking about that, and you're super proud of this case.
Yeah, so many proud moments, especially when I was, leading community efforts at companies, and I had a team in particular. I think the two things I would call out is clearly the proudest moments are, number one, whenever we held in-person conferences for our customers, aka community members, seeing them meet each other in person for the first time and just standing back and watching that is like an incredible, like they've been talking to each other for years online and they met each other in person and to watch that connection and, that's always an amazing experience. I find that you can't get anywhere else. And that's still the value of in-person events. Hat tip, in-person events for everybody out there. And then, not in any particular order, but watching my team members succeed too. Watching them have the same passion about communities and why they're important, and they're succeeding with the programs they were building. Those are clearly my, proud papa moments, I guess, as far as, my career goes. Yeah.
Wow. It's so cute. It's so cute. And it's so important to see just people for whom you're doing what you're doing. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you, Brian. I also wanted to ask you a bit about trends, because world is changing so quickly, actually. And do you follow maybe some trends, or you see during working with companies with different brands, some trends in community building, community management, community marketing, and you can share also with us with these trends?
Yeah, I think the biggest trend that I see right now, everybody's thinking I'm going to say AI, and I'm not going to say AI. That's a thing. We'll see what happens. I think it's early. The biggest trend that I see right now in the work that I do is a shift of ownership of community. And what I mean by that is who am I talking to every day is an interesting question, because over the years, it's like, if you think about back to earlier on, you asked me like, what types of companies do I work with? Right. So like large B2B tech companies, software companies, support classically owned the budget for community, and community was often championed by like the VP of support or the director of support or something. And then there was, kind of a period of time where customer success owned community. And these are broad strokes. There's definitely like every company has a little bit of this, during COVID, there was a little bit of like marketing owned community because they had all the unused event budget, right? You couldn't throw a conference or do in-person events. And they said, hey, let's build online community instead. We kind of gone in and out of that a couple of times. There's been some like different things with our sponsor Gainsight here. You know, they have been pushing like customer success professionals to think about community. What I see today, as we sit here, as the biggest trend is actually customer marketing. Most of who I'm talking to and my clients right now, it's chief marketing officers, say VPs of marketing, customer marketing professionals are the ones that are owning and kind of operating, you know, communities. And so that's been a big kind of trend change. And I think also opportunity for those of us who build community to get access to a little bit of a newer market, maybe, or, you know, folks that we hadn't been talking to before. And what's interesting about that is they're very keen on things like advocacy and, you know, loyalty and those sorts of things. Typically in the past, when we thought about marketing owning community, it was like, oh no, they're going to want leads and, you know, those kinds of things, which some of that's still there, but they're right now kind of much more interested in the customer marketing side of it, which I think is a really good alignment actually with what we've all been doing in community for, you know, a long time. So I think it's a positive development and, you know, a big opportunity for all of us community builders out there.
Can you share some advices how it's better to develop in customer marketing?
I think a lot of a lot of the things that they talk about are things that we've been doing forever in community, and we might use different words to describe them. Right. But ultimately, if you talk to customer marketers, what they'll say is, hey, I'm trying to drive word of mouth. I'm trying to drive loyalty. I'm trying to drive like reference programs, advocacy programs, things like that is what they care about and what they measure and the results they're looking for. And community can just be such a great vehicle, you know, for all of that. And those are all outcomes that we've been driving either intentionally or as side effects of what we do in community for a really long time. So some of it is for us community builders is, you know, not being too proud and trying to force our terminology onto everybody, but actually hearing them out. What are you trying to accomplish? Okay, here's how community can work, you know, with you to help you. It's not going to solve everything, but here's how we can contribute to those goals that you have. And I've found that there's pretty strong alignment actually between the groups, you know, community and customer marketing in general. So yeah, that's what I would recommend. And then as far as metrics go, what do they care about? You know, what are they trying to measure? Well, like with advocacy, it's like number of acts of advocacy. You know, maybe they have a reference program, how many reference calls, maybe they have like a media program, how many quotes are we getting from our customers in, you know, media articles about our company, you know, those kinds of things. And then also measuring the success for the advocates as well.
Yeah, brilliant insights. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Because we actually have here a lot of guys who are just starting also their community journey. And I also want to ask you about advices for guys who are just starting, who are just trying them in community building, community management. What can you say for them? What you can wish them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the through line of this conversation has been also the advice, which is you have to learn a little bit of business, right? And I understand not everybody wants to be like a big time business person, whatever. And I totally respect that, right? But at the same time, if we're going to build community properly and it's going to be valuable inside and be seen as valuable inside the company, it's why we're talking about reporting, right? All of these things are interconnected. It's really hard to tell stories inside of an organization or gain more buy-in or have people understand why what we do is important if we can't connect it back to what they care about, just like we were just talking about customer marketing, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't need to know everything about everything, but you need to know at least a little bit about what does marketing care about? what does customer success care about? What does the support team care about? What does
Mm-hmm.
our CEO care about? How do they measure things? How do they talk about it? What are the words that they use? And then try to connect what we do to that. And so, in that sense, my best advice to anybody is just get as much exposure as you can to those various stakeholders, different groups. Like maybe you're working in a charity, you're helping build community for a charity. It's the same thing, right? It's like, okay, well, how does the charity measure success? Is
Yes.
it by number of donations?
Yes.
Is it by volunteer hours? What is their metric for success? And then figure out how community can impact it. So I think just spending some time having basic acumen about wherever it is that you work or whatever it is that you do is going to help you actually build better community.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes people hear me say this and they think, well, I don't want to do that, or that sounds backwards. I'm here for the community. You'll hear this like purity argument sometimes, right? Which is like, well, I don't care about any of that. I'm here for the community. I'm here for the people. And what I would say is that those things are not mutually exclusive, right? It's not an or, it's an and. And what you actually find when you work inside of companies or organizations or, whatever it is, even a charity, is that you have to do some minimum amount of the business stuff to earn the right to go build the community you want to build. And so when you hear me talking about this, like all this business stuff, and people are like, wow, this guy, he's lost the plot. He doesn't care about community members and whatever. It's like, no. I care very deeply about them, but I just understand the game that I'm playing, which is in order to help them and build the best community I can build for them so that they can have a great experience. I have to do some of the business stuff. I don't really have it. Like that's the only choice that I have, is to kind of like, how am I going to get the money? How am I going to get the headcount? How am I going to get the platform? I have to convince the business first that this is a good idea and that we should do these things. And then I earn the right to go build this amazing community and focus on member outcomes. Right. So it's a bit of an order of operations thing that I think gets misunderstood sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Brian, thank you so much for these thoughts, because when we are working with businesses and working with new community managers, they are a bit shocked that we need to talk a lot about business, a lot about their goals, a lot about their marketing, a lot about products, a lot about sales, a lot about money. And they ask, but we are here, I wanted to do something with people, but it's a big part of business. And I so appreciate you for these thoughts, because it's super important, especially when you have some consultancy practice and you need to understand your founder, you need to understand your CMO, your CEO, and so on and so on. And you need to talk about business, and you need to deep dive into a lot of different topics in business, and of course in community management also. Yeah, thank you. Actually, about your academy, it's possible to become a member, or maybe to start also learning for development skills in community strategy.
Yeah, for sure. All of the career. So there's currently, I think as we record here today, there's 24 courses. There's always more coming.
Wow.
And of those courses, there's sort of different tracks. And one of the track is career track. And all of those are free and always will be. So I want people to go there, sign up for free, take all the courses about like how to get started in community. There's also some other tracks where there are free courses. So for example, you can learn about how to build a strategy for free. You can learn about how to measure your community for free, like at a fundamental level, obviously. So there's a good mix there there are some paid things. There are some things that require a subscription or whatever, but there's also just a lot of free knowledge, available. And I would say you can go there and learn a lot without ever sending me a dime, and I'm more than happy to do that. So go get the free knowledge, everybody. And then the podcast is the same thing, where Erica and I spent hours and hours just giving our knowledge away for absolutely free. And so that's a great resource if you're brand new in your journey with community. You can go listen to Erica and I teach you how to do that for free for many, many, many hours. And we never ask for anything in return.
Awesome. Guys, you have a lot of tasks after this podcast. So just open your Notion and just write all of them down and just
Yeah.
go, because you have a lot of stuff and a lot of things to learn, to watch. Amazing. And I have the last one question. It's so big pity that we need to finish our episode, but okay, we have a time, and just wanted to ask you about future of community building. If you need to describe the vision and the future of community building in just 3 words, only 3 words, Brian, only 3 words, what would they be?
Same but different. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's funny. As long as I've been doing this, there's so many things we've learned that have not changed. Like shockingly are still relevant today. Some of the things we learned 20 years ago are still good best practices to go build a community today. But then there's that extra, if you broke it down, say it's 60-40, 70-30, that 40% or 30% is like what's changing, what's different, what's new platforms, new ways of doing things that are unique to specific companies or communities or groups of people. And so I think as much as we want to always say, what's the hot new thing? It's going to change everything, AI. There's still some large percentage of community building that is still kind of the same stuff we've been talking about for a long time. And I think it's good as a community builder to recognize that both can be true, that there are tried and true and tested things that we know work. And then the rest of it is, let's go try new stuff and figure out what it is. And so, in that regard, I think everybody should be doing both, right? Like learn the best practice style stuff, and then just always be keeping an eye out for what's changing, and try to do your best in your. It's all we can do. That's really it. It's not super exciting, but I think that's kind of the future of community is the same stuff we've been doing plus whatever the new stuff is.
The same but different. I like that. Brian, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your thoughts, for your energy, for being so open, and it's amazing time, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and this podcast, and I hope that you will see Brian offline in London. So just go into London, go into the conference, and Brian, I wish you an amazing day. I know you have early morning now, and I hope you are inspired also a bit after our podcast, and we'll have amazing day. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, guys, bye-bye.